Are we in the frame?
I'd say it's equally.
Welcome.
You're equal. You're
Are
good.
we?
Welcome.
Are we?
You look good.
Thank you.
Hold on, I need to highlight something so that I don't.
All right.
You be a nerd, I'll smoke my pipe, and this can be pints with Basil. Okay, anyways, hey, how you doing? Grand. Feeling good?
Feeling good.
I'm excited about this because, as you know, I want to be Matt Fradd from Pints with Aquinas, but never do I get to film in an interview setting. I actually don't know if I should be looking at you or at them.
Oh,
Probably you, which
yeah.
means no
I
snide
don't want to look
comments.
at them. So I'm just gonna look at you.
It's fine. That's fine.
Just look at me.
Okay, well, I have to greet them. Hello, YouTube and Common House. Welcome back to an unusual video in which I am interviewing a dear friend of mine. This is Kriste. Kriste, say hello.
Hello.
We are going to talk about something that I can never answer, which is the great concept of scouting in the Charlotte Mason curriculum. I love the idea of it. I love to be outdoors like a lot of people, but scouting is actually a world of its own. And so I brought my friend, who's actually our scout head mistress.
It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing, but it does overlap with the things we do already know about Mason. And so that's why you're here to kind of break it down for us. We are in our scout uniforms. If you were wondering about these hats, our head mistress or scout mistress here has chosen these. And are you going to talk about our uniforms at all?
Oh, I don't know.
Our kids look really cute.
They do look cute. I'm such a secret keeper, though. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, I might, for Common House, post a photo with the kids' faces covered, privacy,
Yeah.
in order to show their epic outfits. Because I know your boys and my kids have been dying to wear these outfits for like weeks now. Every time
I've
something
just been
appears.
hiding them.
I had to hide the socks, the green socks.
Oh no, the
were
socks
just-
are in a basket in
Yeah.
there, and it's like they go from there to the wash to there. They don't go to the room, because otherwise my middle would just be in a long time. Because that's all he wears is knee socks.
They're pretty awesome.
They're not meant to be knee socks.
But that explains the hats.
Yeah.
So these are our scouting hats, and we are wearing green dresses, although I will say we're both probably on the hunt for vintage scout dresses.
Oh, for sure. They're just a little pricey.
And also long sleeve,
That too.
which will help us for the majority of our year, but
Yeah.
not right now.
Right.
It's a little toasty.
The problem is getting like the natural fiber ones. They have to
Like
be
the wool.
Yeah, and they have to be older, and
Yeah.
so therefore more expensive. But this is.
But they'll last. They'll last, I tell the minister.
They've already been around for 100 years. What, 100 more?
Right, we'll carry us through the end of our days. I'll never need another scout dress, is how I will pitch it. Anyways, okay, Kriste Janczyk, welcome to the Commonplace. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being my friend and also my scout headmistress, because without Kriste, last year our scouting was a bit of like, let's take a compass on the trail. Check. That's as far as we got. That's as far as we got. As much as we love outdoors, we did not get tassels. That's another thing. Oh, I meant to bring my Pevensey flag to talk about our tassel colors, and I did forgot. So Common House will know of Kriste as the Queen Mother of the House of Neverland. If you were confused about this, come visit us in Common House. We had a family war. We are the House of Pevensey, obviously. And we were also victorious. And so I was going to bring our flag to just hang.
Just because
at
her legs are longer. My boys will outgrow her.
My daughter's very fast. That's how we won. Anyways, okay. So we've got a pipe, we've got some drinks, and we are going to talk about scouting. But to kick us off, no one knows you like I do, and I feel like I would come up with all these fun random things to share, but I would like for you to introduce yourself.
I can introduce myself. You might have to say something.
Okay, you introduce yourself and tell us how you kind of got into scouting, because this is very much your jam.
Yeah. Okay. So my name is Kriste, and I live in Pennsylvania, very close to Baden, with my husband. We have 3 boys. They are 6, 4, and around 20 months. I keep joking around that we don't really know how old the third one is because he's the third, but he's like in that ballpark.
He moves, he walks,
Yeah, you know.
he eats.
So that's our family, and our oldest starts formal lessons tomorrow.
Big time.
Which is very exciting. I grew up, I'm a homeschool graduate, which is great. I joke around that I was like an accidental Mason graduate, not necessarily in philosophy, but in a lot of the extra kind of curricular things. And I kind of fell in love with Mason when I realized that things like scouting and nature and art and all of that being incorporated as a science relations, that's what I like held on to from my childhood. So that was kind of what drew me into Mason. And then our scouting came from Autumn asking for help.
But I'm being like, do this for me. Please, I need your help.
Well, we were sitting down talking about the school year, and we were just going over the program guide.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm going to stroll here and here. And she was like, oh, it's fine. I'll give you this, this, and this. And then she was like, I don't know what to do about scouting. I was like, done.
Yeah, seriously.
So honestly, even when I said I would do it, I had no idea what it was. She's like, well,
That is your first working principle.
that sounds feasible.
Well, it's like handicraft and knowing your trees and compass and pacing and flag sewing and tassels. We call Kriste the sugar plum fairy. She can make anything. She can like create anything in your head or your head. Like it can be done. And so, yeah, it was just exactly what you needed to be doing.
It was great. And so once I got into it and I realized what it was, I was hooked.
Yeah.
And now it's just all I think about.
Yeah.
Love it.
I know. I'm really excited. So, Kriste, our group is called Withy Windle. That is the only part of this I can take credit for, is naming our group and insisting we wear these hats tonight. Otherwise, she has created this phenomenal program for our kids. I do believe a small portion template-y sort of thing is going to Common House.
Yes.
And then I'm hoping she will do me the honor of forming a whole guide to put in the Commonplace shop. So I do have resources in the shop if you're not part of Common House, but Common House gets all the goods. And so we're going to have a template with this video for them. But it's amazing. You've done such good work.
Thank you.
I'm very excited. We will actually scout this year. We're going to learn so many things. Have I told you that my kids keep saying, so Miss Kriste is in charge of scouting. Are you in charge of anything? Do you do anything?
Do you do anything?
Do you do anything, Mom, about our school?
What is it that you do?
It hurts because, well, I mean, we came up with co-op uniforms. I also gave them a cool outfit, but this is just another level. The compasses, the belt bag for foraging, like the haversacks. It's just a whole thing.
Really
and I know a lot of this you have learned from your new crush, I would call him.
Yeah.
And I say that as it's totally normal.
Yeah.
I have a history degree. I had a historical crush every semester of college. Like, had a thing for Otto von Bismarck and then Bonhoeffer for a long time. It's totally normal. You, though, are obsessed with the man who created scouting, Boy Scouting.
I wish he was my grandfather.
But he has a connection to Mason. And every time I've explained this to people, they're like, wait, what? So can you introduce us to the man behind Scouting and kind of bridge that story for us?
Yes. So, Lord Robert Baden-Powell. That's my man. Yeah, so one of the coolest guys I've had the pleasure of learning about. He was a military hero. He was a spy while in the military, which, like, what little boy doesn't want to be a spy? I wanted to be a spy. As a girl,
too.
like, you know. And he came from an entire family of wonderful people who did amazing things like exploring, and people who were naturalists. I feel like any parent would have looked at them at this point and been like, oh, what a success.
Done such a good job.
And there were like 10 of them, right? Which is amazing. So his connection to Mason is really fun. So there is this story where, so he wrote this book that was called The Aids to Scouting. Mm-hmm. And he actually wrote it for the military. And it was just talking about like technique and things that men needed in order to become a really good military scout.
Right.
So that kind of like went out, and it actually became really popular with just British people. To the point where there is this story where, here, I'll just read it to you.
Please do.
So, okay, I found out that, okay, I'm just gonna read this story. Okay, so it says, one instance concerned Brigadier General Allenby, later Field Marshal Lord Allenby, and his son. As he rode home after a field day, the general was surprised to hear a voice call out, "Father, you are shot. I am in ambush and you haven't seen me. You should look up." The general did so, and there was his son lying along the branch of a tree, and higher up was the boy's governess. It was she who in her work had made use of BP's ideas on observation. So this guy had this experience with his child where he basically ambushes him, and then in talking to her, she was trained at Ambleside, where they were using aids to scouting as inspiration for teachers to go out and use it with children. So Mason had found it, had read it, and thought that it was inspiring for children and something that they needed. So anyways, he ended up talking to this guy at a party. He was like, "Oh, you'll never believe what happened." So he tells them the story. And then that, along with a long line of things, kind of set this like wildfire in his mind that this isn't something that just adults need, but especially children in this generation. So that's his connection to Mason, which is pretty cool.
I love that.
She was like using it, and it was kind of what sparked the idea for the Boy Scouts.
Yeah, no one knows that. I think people think Charlotte Mason's like pigeonholed to like homeschooling moms who like linen and frolicking in fields.
Well, it's really funny because if you watch videos about him, just like, mainstream videos, no one would ever mention Mason.
Right.
But he like references her in his books.
That's what I've been told.
Yeah. So you'll get to the end of the chapter and be like, oh, here's like more further reading for parents or like scoutmasters. And he mentions her books pretty regularly, which is really cool. And then if you get into like his philosophy, it overlaps with hers a lot. So the whole concept of living story is something that's really important to him. So we've all heard the phrase like campfire yarns. But what that actually was for him was he would take principles and teach them in the woods during the day. So they would learn all these techniques. And then at night they would sit around the campfire and he would tell stories about these men practicing these things in, really heroic ways. And so it would like capture the imagination of the boy or the girl sitting there and then carry on. So, it wasn't just being out there to entertain children. He actually like believed in the concept of living idea. And if you look at in the Girl Guide book, the first chapter on brownies, it's a story with like sprites and fairies. That's
what I call Ladybird. My little sprite.
It's perfect. So you see a lot of overlap with philosophy, and then something that he would always say is you're not just teaching scouts how to get a living, but how to live. So it's not just so it's not just about the practical. This is what you need to get a job and to be practical. He was much more interested in character of children and character development.
I love that. I also like that the governess was higher up in the tree.
So that's a note that I will make.
Yes. I think that's great. So I know both of our husbands tease us. So our husbands grew up together. So we've been friends for like 10 years. Our husbands have been friends for a long time. But they both tease us that we do all of this, that we're a little extra. Like we have the outfits and the pipes for book club. And these are corncob pipes, but yes, we did have them for book club, and there was lots of banging on tables and drinking of ale. And they joke that it's like, we're just doing this because we want to do it. But I think that's what continually comes out of studying more of classical Mason education, is that the things that are good for persons may change form throughout ages, but are just always good for persons. And so having like a right outfit for the things you'll be doing, engaging with the out of doors, whatever it is in creation, having inspiring ideas around a campfire, that embodied form of living. We love it. And our kids are going to love it, but we have to actually fully do it with them. Like, it's not just a thing where like, okay, so I taught you how to use the compass, head outdoors. Like, you just go do it. Like, we are going to be in full uniform. The scoutmistress my kids are saying you're going to give us demerits.
Oh, it's possible.
If we're not in our outfits.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think they got it from Sword and Stone, but they're like very into demerits right now.
Oh, yeah.
So they're like, Miss Kriste's going to give demerits, Dad.
Right.
Yeah.
Watch out.
Do it. But they understand like there's a responsibility and a duty here, but also it comes through play and it comes through delight and whimsy and amusement. So anyways, I love the governess is up in the tree and even higher than the boy. Right. That's like my favorite part of the story.
And that's such a big part of how like Baden-Powell did everything. He was in it with them. He wasn't just there. He didn't just create a program to entertain children, which I think is what a lot of people think of when they think of the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, like in modern times. But like it was a full-blown thing that he took very seriously for himself as well. And I think he understood that if you just if you just tell your kids to go and do the thing and you're not passionate about it, they're not going to find any delight in it.
They sniff it out. Like, you are the curriculum. That's the classical phrase. Your loves are the curriculum.
Exactly. Yeah. So if they can see you doing it and see you delighting in it, it's just going to spark that fire inside of them.
Absolutely.
And that was something that, if you watch any videos of him, he's like witty and funny and like always saying things with a wink and a smile. He just understood like the careful balance of instruction, but also being fun about it.
Yeah, I love that. So let's give moms an inspiring idea, because I do think that what happens is if you have a curriculum like we do, we're both with CMEC, and it includes scouting materials. You look at it and you're like, this is a lot. I don't know any of this. At least that's how I felt. Not how you felt, how I felt. I don't know any of this. How am I supposed to learn this with my kids? And it turns into tasks, to-dos, kind of management like that. or you go hunting for it because you've heard you need to do this, and it's really actually hard to nail down. That's why I really was grateful you wanted to do this, because I have a lot of questions about how to get started, because it's not very clear online. Like there isn't really anyone focused on scouting so much. And so what would you say is the heartbeat of scouting? The vision, the long-term goal, the thing that's going to be the philosophical undercurrent for all of those to-dos?
Yeah. So Baden-Powell always said that scouting is a game with a purpose.
I love that.
Yeah. So again, it's that really careful counterbalance of doing something that is very intentional and very purposeful, and very needed, like to shape a character of children. But you have to have that kind of like that wink, that smile, and that fun that goes along with it. So going with purpose, so he came out of the Anglo-Boer War, and while he was in there, he was a spy, and he was experiencing for the first time men who just didn't know what they were doing, and their actual physique was really bad. And they didn't have the skills that they needed to actually fight in these wars, in this battle. And so, like, looking at the numbers, it took 450,000 British troops 3 years to defeat 40,000 Boers. So,
wow.
Yeah, and so he was in the midst of this, and while he was in the middle of it, he was like, well, we really, we're struggling with, like, having bronze.
Yeah.
And that's just not something that we have. So what can we do? So he built this whole principle around observation and kind of like the sneak attack, or, the scouting. And so that's, while he was in that, he was writing aids to scouting, which is the initial book that Mason got a hold of. And so, again, when he wrote that, he just thought he was writing it for the military. But then he made this connection where he's like, well, if these are the people in the military now, what is it going to be like in 20 years when all these kids, and this is like post-industrial revolution, when like education is completely different and kids are just sitting in desks, and it, like, their whole system has completely changed. And this is kind of the second or third generation where you're really seeing the impact of that. And so he recognized that and saw a need to change that. So his purpose, honestly, was to change the empire. And he says that in his books. He's like, I'm not interested in, again, entertaining children. I'm setting out to change the empire.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. Yeah. And I think that is how, like, any mother teacher should think of their students and their children, is like, we are growing these souls into the next generation, and they are going to be the people who are going to, like, carry this torch. And so it's, there's just like this holy and wonderful importance to it. So that was something that he saw. So that's kind of the purpose side to it, where it's, you're looking to mold virtue and character. And then the other half of that coin is you have to do it with fun, and you have to do it by playing. And so he has this phrase he says over and over, and it's called playing the game. And I think it's something that he said to kind of entice children and to make them think, this is fun and, whatever. But I honestly think he said it more to wink at parents.
Yeah.
Because you have to be willing to, like, be vulnerable enough to involve yourself in it, to, like, wear the uniform, to get out there and to say, I don't really know how to use a compass, or, like, I don't really know how to do these things, but I'm going to learn, and I'm going to do it alongside you. So those are the two things that go kind of hand in hand. And he was just really good at being able to pass on skills to young children while also keeping things lighthearted and playing. And people talk about him when he was in the military, and he was the same way with adults, with his comrades. So he was great at pulling them aside and teaching them, these are skills that we really need to be, like, great spies. But then also at the end of the day, like, telling funny stories around the fire or singing songs or whatever, to make sure that he kept that lightness always. So yeah, those are the two things that I would say is kind of where everything, like, stems out of. And when you feel like you don't know where you're kind of drifting, you kind of go back to that, where it's scouting is a game with a purpose.
Yeah, I love that. I think in one sense, play is child's work. Like, it is how they practice and embody and understand so much of their world. Yes. But on the other side of that phrase, we can think that play is only child's work.
Right.
When really, like, adults need play, like we actually do. And I think there is a vulnerability component that you mentioned that might actually be the thing that keeps moms from
for
going,
sure.
110% on something like this. Yeah.
But I would argue too that if you can be vulnerable enough to do these things with your children, like, it is way more fun.
Oh, yeah.
Than sitting there and being like, oh, mommy, do you want to, like, build blocks for an hour? Well, maybe.
But I'd rather be in a tree.
But let's go do that. Like, it's so much more fun.
Yeah.
And so much more engaging. And when you're doing that too, you're learning so many new things.
Oh, yes.
And you're learning how to relate to God's creation in a way that maybe you never have before, or maybe in a way that you don't remember since you were a child. Like, it kind of can open up that entire world for you again.
Yeah.
But yeah, there has to be like a massive amount, I think, of vulnerability and humility too. To even say, like, I don't know these things, but I want to learn with you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, humility, repentance, the soil of education. It really can't happen without those. So for the mom that we've now totally won over with scouting, as the Inspiring Ideas often do, could you break down scouting into maybe a couple of categories or like pegs of like, this needs to happen, this needs to happen, this needs to happen? And maybe you'll know, does it all need to happen at once, or can you kind of ease it in? But are there kind of just a framework of breakdown components to kind of help someone take a huge idea and make it like, this is involved, this is involved, this is involved?
So the wonderful thing I think about scouting for the mother teacher is that there are no rules.
You keep saying that to me.
Like, you are the rule maker.
You will be like, they say this, and then they say, whatever you want.
And they do. And kind of the interesting thing about doing this that, you're not buying into the Boy Scouts and their approach. And there are articles that, describe Mason's scouting framework, but you as a mother teacher can combine all of those things. And so that's what I've done. So I would say if you're fully overwhelmed and you don't know what to do and you're looking at your calendar being like, oh, we start school in a week or 2 weeks.
Yep, it's about that time.
I would start with observation. So this was the biggest thing that Baden-Powell talked about in all of his books, was the need for people to be observant. And that's how that child was able to sneak up on his dad, who was in the military.
And not very observant, mind you.
You have to always
everyone walk around looking straight up in the trees.
So the neat part of that is it overlaps with Mason's idea of habit of attention. And so when you take that and put it into nature, it is, you were talking about this in your Kinderleben video the other day about you're just trying to train the eye and train the senses. So you can start really small and take your kids outside. Get used to being outside if that's not something that you're used to.
Yeah.
And learn how to train your child's habit of attention and observation, but also yours, which I think can be tricky. And I always think that my observational skills are higher than the others.
I think we tend to overestimate our Mason skills, like attention and observation, and we underestimate our children.
Yes. So I would definitely start there, and then just playing small games with them. And you can find resources for that. They're all over the internet. They're all over the old books. I would start there and then kind of develop a framework for where you would like to see it go. And you have the beautiful opportunity of looking at all of your students and seeing where they are and being able to mold it to them. And so I know my kids really well. I know your kids pretty well. So I was able to look at the framework that Mason had, and I was able to look at the framework that the Boy Scouts and the Girl Guiders were giving and say, okay, what can we put together to make an easy format for our kids this year? And then I think just, again, being humble and honest. And if you look and say, oh, this is a list, like, if you want to earn your nature lore tassel and you look at the list, you're like, ooh,
It's a lot.
That's a lot. And I don't know, if you know two of the things, great.
Yeah.
Grab onto that and do that. And then look at the general idea and the principle behind the things that are being taught and say, well, I don't really know how to do that thing. And maybe I can learn that for next year, but I can do this. And so you can kind of really plug in and move things around to make it easier for you and what you know. And then if you genuinely don't know something and you want to know and you want your kids to know, ask someone.
Ask a friend.
Ask a friend, or like, I am sure there are so many wonderful old men in church who would love to be asked these questions and never would.
Even dads.
Yes.
This would be a great way to pull in a dad. If you have more of like a woodsman builder kind of guy who knows some of these things, pulling him in be a neat way to include him in the whole education.
Yeah. So I would say that's where I would start, and then just build it out as you go. Don't get overwhelmed by the details.
Yeah.
Which is a thing. I love details, but I tend to get overwhelmed by them. So I always say, like, have a zoom out approach. And if you're like in it and you're feeling overwhelmed, just zoom back out.
Yeah.
It's like, what is the general principle that we're working towards? And what are the 3 things that we can work on this term and move forward? And if those are the 3 things that you get done for the entire term, you're still doing head and shoulders above what most kids are doing these days, which is great.
And you're doing scouting, like you're actually learning. I think we moderns, even if we try not to, are like, if I execute this perfectly, it means I checked off all of the maybe objectives.
Yeah.
You were homeschooled, you had that benefit. Coming out of like modern public school, there's an objective to every lesson, and the teacher teaches to it, and it needs to be heard at the end or assessed at the end, and that's a check off we did that day. But we were talking about an all of life approach. So like you're saying, if I can zoom in on these 3 things for this year, and we don't even get a tassel because we didn't do enough to get the tassel maybe, but we're moving. You've modeled what it looks like to be humble, what it looks like to learn and work towards something. You're not inflaming those unnatural desires, as Mason would say, of like, I get tassel, so I do it. Like the tassel is like an honorary thing. And I know you could probably explain more about, like, we don't even wear the tassels all the time. Like it's not the point of why you're doing these things. But you were actually modeling for your child how you move in God's world, which is a whole world of things you don't know about. And to actually know it has to be done in relationship. And in order to love, you actually have to spend time there. So we could rush through objectives. We could check off a bunch of small tasks, but will we have actually learned to rightly love? And I think for kids, that comes through play, that comes through observation. You can't love anything if you don't know it. Like if you can't observe, you're never going to learn to love.
Well, and I think that's another key piece of scouting that I love, is that you can earn, merit or whatever for what you like to do, for what you find.
You've asked, like Kriste checked in with us and was like, handicrafts you want to do, anything you want to work on, anything you've already done and you want to continue, and then like built out our tassels for us.
Right. And you can personalize it. And if you look at like a modern Girl Scout or modern Boy Scout, like they don't all have the same patches or whatever, because they do things that they find interest in. And so you can really, again, mold it to your individual student. And I think because there's so much character development, you can also, my kid's having a difficult time with this year. What can I formulate that can help them like work those muscles? And then you can, insert that in, and then it's fun and delightful, and you can actually see the progress too of them moving through it, which is great.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. So breaking it down even like further into steps, you have the stack of books here.
I do.
And so I'm curious about what a mom might start with resource-wise. Yeah. Because I feel like you've broken it up beautifully into focus maybe here or here or here. But for the woman's like, okay, great. Do you have a resource? Which is, of course, the big question. There's a stack here. Could you walk us through some of these, or what you use to do Withy Wendell? And if anyone can tell me why it's named Withy Wendell.
Yeah, we won't tell them that.
You'll get points. In my heart.
Yeah. If you get an imaginary tassel.
Yes. Kriste will now make a tassel and mail it to you. Stand up for it.
Okay, so the main books that I used were Scouting for Boys. This is a newer version, which we leveled books. However,
I'm really jealous Kriste has all of our Scout books. I don't own them. I helped purchase them, but I don't own them.
The good thing about this is it has a really good small biography about Baden-Powell.
Oh, nice.
In the beginning.
Okay,
cool. That is really delightful and wonderful. And
I'm going to buy these books you list out today.
And it was a really good introduction, I think, into the whole thing. And then in the back, it has the actual book. So, Scouting for Boys.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I pause you? Yeah. Will you explain why we're talking about Scouting for Boys? Because girls were also included in the beginning.
Yes.
I just don't think we mentioned that, and so I don't want anyone to think, I have to go look at Girl Scout specific things necessarily. Can you kind of weed girls in here real fast?
Yeah. So Baden-Powell did develop Girl Scouts, and so they are separate things, but he did, if you read in both of the books, they are allowed to scout together. They are welcome to be together. However, I would say
Hot take. Here it comes. I can tell.
If you sit, so the other book that I used was Girl Guiding, and it's kind of the same thing. It's just like,
Sorry. Oh, it's still also him. Okay, got it.
it's him and his sister.
Agnes.
So nice.
One of us needs to have a kid named Agnes now.
That's my great grandmother's name.
Really? No, well, you can have her then.
Thanks. Anywho. So the really nice thing is if you read these, you can really see how they're very similar, but there are things that are catered for girls and there are things that are catered for boys. And so the boys are really taught to be men and to be like helpful for everyone that they meet. And just to be there to serve their communities and really anyone that they come into contact to. And when the girls, they really are trying to train them to be helpful in the home.
Yeah.
So first with their mothers, and then also in learning all of these skills to, he talked a lot about how young girls were going to also change the empire because it's so funny to read. He was concerned with them being overconsumed with the radio.
Yeah. Well,
with,
not totally wrong.
Girl
Baden-Powell.
magazines. And you read this and you're like, well,
Lewis had concerns about the girl
if
magazines.
he could only see it now.
Yeah.
So that would be my only caveat is
Well, do you remember when we talked about how Mason talked about how frivolous girls just talk about their clothing all the time?
Yes.
That's also in Mason.
yes, yeah, exactly. So that would be my only caveat is that he welcomed them doing it together.
Right.
But I would still cater it specifically.
Yeah.
Some of the things.
I'm glad you pulled that out because I know that you've done that for our group. So our group is all men folk and one lady. But there's been like a lot of thought and intention put for our lady scouter.
Yes. Well,
We
and
call them
even-
tenderfoots before
Yes.
they get their tassels. So our tenderfoot.
And even if you read the language in the books, it's just very different.
Yeah.
Which I think is really important. Like a good example is, you read about campfire food for the boys, and it's like, this is how you survive. And then you read it for the girls, and
Bring your pepper and your salt.
they call it camp catering,
Right.
Which
Which is so funny because we went camping in maybe like late May, and my husband was like, buy hot dogs. This was our first camping trip as a family of 5 and everything. And I was like, I'm sorry. Night 1, I'm making chicken fajitas with roasted peppers over a fire. Night 2, I'm making...
That's a very practical distinction. Yes.
I came home and was like, I need little spice containers to travel while camping, babe. Yeah. It's so funny. No, I love that because actually that's a question coming up in our Q&A because we have a monthly Q&A in Common House and it's kind of like a ask anything, people vote, really fun. But one is about how we use language and living ideas to basically teach boys and teach girls.
Yes.
Because while we focus so much in education about what's common to us as persons, like you just said, we are aiming to have our boys be men and my daughter be a woman. And that's very different.
Yes.
Equal in dignity, different in design, like they're going to fill different parts. And so I just wanted, sorry, because you were talking, we talked so much about Boy Scouts, but for those who have daughters, this is still able to connect and also needs to be tailored. So
So before he even developed like Girl Scouting at all, he wrote about how they can participate hand in hand. But you got to keep them different.
Could you imagine if we separated our kids?
There you go.
Lady Bird would be like, well, actually, she'd be with us, and she'd be like, "This is awesome. It's just girl time." She lives in a land of men. Anyways, continue on, please.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's fine. So these were the two that I built a lot of the, I guess, like just technical framework out of. So the Girl Guiding, Scouting for Boys.
Both by Baden-Powell. I will try to remember to link them, but I'm really bad about those things. I need a secretary.
Hello.
Anyways.
I have so many things. Okay, I'll go really quick.
No, take your time. This is the stuff that, I mean, the next question is, but what resource do you have?
Love a good book.
I know you do. And you've also, we had some books, well, some of our books went from the UK to us back to the UK.
I just got
Did the knitting book come?
Yeah.
Not a handicraft
That's
book.
gonna be my surprise at the end. My flourish.
We are all going to be darning socks this winter and knitting sweaters.
We are.
Yes.
Okay. Handy projects for boys.
Oh, I haven't even seen this one.
This is great.
I don't like when you hide books from me.
I showed you
I
this.
haven't.
I did show you this. Yeah, sorry.
So many new things.
It's okay. It was like a year ago.
Oh, okay.
This is not recent.
Okay.
This is like when nothing was happening. I was like, I have this.
I was like, I'm starting formal school. Yeah.
Like, we're having so much fun. Yeah, so this is really amazing. And they have this, like, if you have a tinkerer among you?
I do.
Yeah.
Do you know him?
This is the one. So let's see. So it does activities and then also handicrafts. So this is measuring the height of a tree, which you do have to do as a scout. Oh, and I would say this is a good one too if you are not formal scouting and you are.
I would say, could this be Kinderleben?
Yes.
Okay.
For sure. I mean, some of them is like how to build a canoe, so maybe not. But you can flip through.
Yeah. Find the ones that work for where your child is.
I mean, they have like you can build an airplane that goes on a bicycle, so when you ride the bike, the wings flap.
You cannot tell the Boy King about this.
I'm gonna get
For those who are new to here and wonder why my children have such weird nicknames, I do not use their names publicly to protect their privacy.
But we also just call them that.
But I also do just refer to them as their nicknames.
And then the feat of balancing on chairs.
Yep. All of our kids know how to do that. Did you just say balance on chairs?
Yeah.
All of our children can do that.
Yeah.
They don't need that.
Competition. Let's see.
They've been balancing on high things for years.
How to find a blind spot in the eye.
You know a childhood like that.
And you can make lanterns and all kinds of things. So,
Okay, so this is a great book. I will
This
also
is
be
really
purchasing this book.
yeah, and I mean, don't get overwhelmed. You don't have to build a canoe. Like,
But you should.
yeah, like you can. And it's also kind of like fun. They have like some like sciencey things, and, like nature. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I like that. It's covering a large scope.
Yeah, it does.
Sometimes you pigeonhole child based on just books, and it's like, no, you should care about a great many things.
Yeah. That's a good intro. Okay, and then as far as like the nature things for the people who struggle.
Yeah,
Okay, let's make the National Audubon Guides.
love them.
These are great. So they
You can
have
find them used online very easily. Don't buy
Yes.
them new; they're very expensive.
or any used bookstore.
any used bookstore always has a couple.
Or yard sales.
Yep,
Find them all the
a
time.
lot of grandpas getting rid of them.
Oh, I should start picking them up and putting them in comments.
You should. We have a book selling area in Common House. Kriste here will be purchasing and selling
I just thought
Audubon
last
guides.
weekend now. Okay. So I will say the Audubon Guides I love for teaching observation.
Okay, why?
Because if you catch a butterfly, say, and it's orange, and these are your choices,
The Audubon guides are very difficult for
you
me.
have to like actually pay attention.
It's the white flowers that get me. I will flip through the pages over and over again and ask the kids, which one do you think it is?
What do you think?
What do you think it is?
You tell me.
Yeah.
So they actually have to look at it and be like,
Yep.
oh, this is it. And then they'll be like, nope, on that wing, it has, whatever. So it's really good in forming observation. And they have them for all the animals. We have the bird one. This is insects. Insects?
It's butterflies, right?
This is butterflies. Yeah. And we have insects and
We have birds and
Spiders.
wildflowers, I think. They're two separate ones, but I think together we have quite a bit.
yeah, we have insects and spiders, which I don't like looking at because I'm afraid of spiders, but I'm working on it because
You know what? You have to love them.
God created all things. And we are a friend to all.
We are friends to all that live in our house.
So these are great if you're just starting and whatever.
Yeah.
I will say, however, they're a pain to carry.
They're very heavy, but then Kriste discovered these, and this is what was in my nature fanny pack on the trail.
So I ran into these at a museum. I don't even know where I was. But okay, so this is Pennsylvania birds, Pennsylvania trees, and wildflowers. So this like has everything that you need for where you are. And these are nice and lightweight.
They can get wet if
They
you
can
are
get
by the
wet.
creeks.
Yep, which is great. So it just has all of the ways to identify them, and then they don't have the information about them, so you can identify them. If you have like a dry erase marker, you can circle them while you're on the trail.
That's a good idea.
And then when you get home, you can look them up in your Audubon guides and read about like details and stuff. Same thing with trees and flowers. So those are great little handy things, and they're lightweight and won't weigh your pack down.
Yeah, I fit them in my fanny pack.
Okay, and then last thing, this is one thing.
It's debatable.
This is one category. So old books you can find anywhere, and they're cheap as chips. Like you can just like this one I paid $3 for.
Yeah, I've seen nature books are very expensive.
This is Reader's Digest North American Wildlife. It doesn't have to be super fancy.
I was gonna say, do you have a way of assessing when you're looking at nature books before you purchase them? What do you look for?
Looking them, yeah.
Tell us.
So here's a good example. Well, I do have to get a sense of their writing skills. And
So they're like poetic.
yeah,
Are you looking for living books, or what do you mean by that?
No, not necessarily living, but if you're like telling too many personal stories that aren't witty or funny, then I don't.
Got it.
These are just, we're not stingrays. These are just very, like detail oriented. It's kind of similar to the Audubon Guide. Also, the pictures are beautiful.
They're really nice.
And what I like about this is it's all North American animals.
Okay.
And then it has some like wildlife too.
So principle or practice, buy things related to your geographic location.
Yes.
Which I do think actually Mason moms can probably feel frustrated by. So many of the things we read are about British trees and British animals.
Oh, that's a thing.
Stuff,
Yes,
where
you
you're
need
like,
to be aware
well,
of that.
do we have this tree around us?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep, that's the thing.
Yeah.
So I bought this at a used bookstore. I think it was $3. And for like a year, I just kept it in my car. And when I was like at the Chick-fil-A drive-thru or whatever, I would just pick an animal that I didn't know a lot about
That's so smart.
and read about it.
Oh, that's a really helpful.
Yeah, just keep it in the
tip.
car.
That's great.
And like this is the same.
They're kind of heavy. You wouldn't want to keep them in your bag.
No.
That's really
But
nice
it's just
tip.
like,
just keep
or
them in.
keep it on your coffee table or whatever. Wild Animals of North America. This is just National Geographic. I had to buy this because my 6-year-old took the other one. They're like really similar. I mean, this has more photographs, which I would prefer illustrations, but gets the job done. And then
Okay, which one's this?
so this is North American Birds.
By do you know who published it?
I don't know.
We'll try to figure it out.
Prentice Hall,
Okay, Prentice Hall.
Mill and Mill. I think they're like nature people.
Okay.
But just so I initially bought this book to paint out of because the illustrations are so good.
Okay.
But again, they just have really good information about how to spot them.
Those are really pretty.
Yeah.
They actually look like you did them. I will brag about Kriste's amazing painting skills. It makes her uncomfortable, but she is a phenomenal painter. She's also an art instructor at Co-op.
Yeah.
She very much has the skill set and interest for something like this. Okay, thank you for sharing some of your favorite resources.
Anywhere. I mean,
they're great.
And it doesn't have, like I said, you can buy the fancy things, but like,
A lot of times you don't have to though. If you're willing to hunt for good old stuff, people unfortunately it does sadden me like if I'm at a library book sale or a used bookstore and I see what people are willing to get rid of for nothing and these are treasures, but at the same time I benefit so greatly from it that I do happy dances when I find those books.
I will say, don't buy books that have been illustrated, that illustrate the animals in a way that don't make them look real anymore. You know what I mean?
Oh, that sounds very Mason.
I think that there is a,
Do you mean like cartoonish?
not cartoon, so I think that there's this new illustration kind of genre where it's not cartoony, but it's not the real thing.
Okay.
It's like this like midway thing.
Okay.
It's like cutesy.
Okay.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. That makes sense.
So find things that actually look like, because if you're trying to learn these things, if you're like looking at the cutesy thing and then you're in there, you're like, is that a ramen? Is it not?
Right.
You know?
Oh no, I feel like I struggle with that. Knowing things from like my Disney movie past or something. Like it kind of looks like it a
Right.
little
So
bit.
if you can find something that has been painted from the actual animal,
much better.
yeah, much better.
Okay, great. All right, so for our last question here, to kind of round out. Now, you did something that I am assuming, well, I know it was intentional on your end. I'm not sure if it was like unique to planning scouting, where you tied in our curriculum work.
I did, yes.
With our scouting. So when I go into my thing, Kriste created the Swithy Windle thing, and I go and put on my at a glance guide, which Common House knows what that is, my weekly breakdown, and I pull from all of our books for natural history. So whether it's Burgess or Arabella Buckley, I pull and it corresponds to what we're doing for Withy that week. Could you kind of explain to us how you created your Withy guide? Just like a high overview. It doesn't have to be really in depth. I know I did not.
You're talking about like the weekly breakdowns?
No, I'm talking about how when you sat down, you actually put it all together.
Oh, well.
I didn't prep you for that, but
okay.
I think that it's something that would be really helpful for the mom who already has a curriculum that includes natural history, which most do because it's so important to Mason.
Yes.
How you sort of wove that together with all the things like our interests and the handicraft suit.
I see what
how you
like
kind of put that
specifically
together.
putting natural history into.
Yeah, how did you plan Withy? Practically, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah,
'Cause Withy is
For sure.
killer.
Yeah, so I knew I wanted to tie in nature study to it because obviously it's like part of it. So what I did is I looked at, so we're in the CMEC. So I just looked at the what we needed to cover in term 1. And then when I was looking at the books and reading through it, I was like, this doesn't make practical sense for the time of year that we're going to be doing it. So I pre-read everything that we needed to do. And then I just like moved things around to fit with the season so that we could actually accomplish the things that we need to get done. And then also like cover the curriculum. So I started there, and then I don't know.
No, that's great. I'm trying to think about the practical things. So, like Withy for us is 2 hours.
Yes.
We haven't had Withy
breakdown
yet.
of, like,
So our first Withy is this upcoming, it'll be, 2 weeks-ish since we recorded this, but do you have an order of events for like a Withy afternoon?
Yeah.
So let's end on that of like how you kind of, so we do our bookwork at home. So I have my normal natural history.
Yes.
We do our Burgess and everything, but then we come together with our nature notebooks. That's part of it. Can you give us kind of like, here's what we do at Withy? Because I think that will like tie it all together.
Yeah.
Like, this is what it looks like.
Yeah, so this is our timetable out of our little guide that I made. We get there and we do scout and guide welcome, our motto, our song. So I have like 10 minutes on that. And then for 15 minutes, we'll do natural history review and questions. So again, we've done all of our readings. If anyone has anything that they're wondering about, we can talk about it. And then also if anyone has anything interesting that they want to share or whatever, that would be our time to go over natural history. And then we have 20 minutes of scouting work. And so our scouting work, I base that off of goals that we have for tassel work. And then I also tie that into the list of attainment.
I know, it's so good.
Because there's just so much overlap. And like, if you can do all the things, do all the things. So our scouting work this year is based off of the list of attainments for Mason. And then just things that we're working towards. We're doing general efficiency, tassel, and nature lore.
So for reference, our oldest are only formal students out of the 6, and they are both 6.
Yes.
So they're both trying to hit this list by the end. Mine will turn 7 halfway through the year, but they're both trying to aim for this list of attainments together.
Yep. So we do 20 minutes of scouting work, and that could be compass work, or that's what we're working on this term. So that's what that would be. And then 20 minutes will be scouting for weekly wildlife. So, if you're pressing flowers, or if you're looking for a specific animal or something from that week, that's kind of where you're doing like your nature walk and finding all of that. And then you do 20 minutes of nature journals. And that's kind of like application from like what you found. And then for 20 minutes, you play the game.
Yeah, play the game.
And then we do closing and home project review. So anything that we need to review throughout the week, like we're going to be learning 6 birds, names, how to identify them, songs. So we would just talk about what we're going to review at home, have a little powwow, a little song. Yep. And we're done.
And then some wild shenanigans.
That's
time.
it.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you for going through that, because I think that practical, like actual implementation.
And I'm going to put this in the template.
Awesome. So again, we will have a template that will just be for Common House, and it'll be kind of based on our Withy thing, because Kriste's already done so much work.
Yeah.
And then I will let you know, YouTube, when there is an actual guide in the shop. So if you would like to just wait for like a full built out guide on scouting. Thank you so much for doing this, for having us in your home, me, and the internet.
Yes.
And just sharing your great love of scouting.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. All right. I just always say I'll see everyone in 2 weeks.